This is 1360 AM. WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station. Brought to you from Forsyth Broadcasting. Or listen to us at WNJCradio.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, the smiling comes, I know. Only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hello, I'm Reverend Carl Kelly, and I head up the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Indiana. President Obama's attacks on the Constitution continues to be aided and abetted by one of his trusted allies in Congress, ultra-liberal Democrat Andre Constant of Indianapolis, nationally known for his infamous racial rants against the Tea Party. I want to tell you about J.D. Manier. J.D. will be a representative for the people of the 7th District. J.D. Manier is a pro-growth Reagan conservative and is co-host of the conservative Commandos Radio show. He is asking you to join his army of supporters in order to defeat Carson and go to Washington to demand special prosecutors for Benghazi, the IRS, and other scandals. J.D. is interested in what's good for the people of the 7th District, not Nancy Pelosi. He will promote strong economic growth and jobs by getting the government off the backs of the people, voting for tax cuts and slashing regulations. Help elect a pro-life defender of freedom who will strongly support Israel, vote to cut wasteful spending, and battle to repeal Obama's socialist agenda. Log on to ManierForCongress.com and donate today. That's MINIEAR for Congress.com. Paid for and authorized by the J.D. Manier for Congress Committee.
I'm J.D. Manier, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Indiana District 7, and I approve of this message.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
And welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, like we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and around the world on the Internet via our Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And today is Tuesday, and if today is Tuesday, on the other line must be my good friend and co-host for the day, Sam Rohr. Sam, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Rick Trader, great to be with you again. And yes, you are my good friend as well. And it's good to be with you on this sunny Tuesday. And it's a lot to go over, as always, Rick. I know your coffers are full. You're just chomping at the bit to get going on some of what we have laid out before us, aren't you?
Well, we do. In fact, Sam, we are going to have a first here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. An actual first, and that's not easy to say after being on the air as long as we have. But one of our guests, Sam Rohr, in fact, our guest at 3:35, Kevin Sabet. Kevin served in the Obama administration as a senior advisor at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Sam, I'm shocked myself. I can barely get it out of my mouth.
That's what I was just saying. You're just chomping at the bit. But this will be a first. I mean, we're talking about drug policy. Mm-hmm. The Obama administration.
Yes.
And this individual who was there for a long time is willing to come on. I am very anxious to talk with him, Rick.
I am too. And Kevin's written a book called Reefer Sanity: 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. I got to be honest with you, Sam. When I saw the headline, I thought this would be interesting. And then when I saw that Kevin served in the Obama administration as senior advisor, I'm thinking, well, I don't think so, until I read the article about his book. And I think that a lot of our listeners are going to be very surprised what Kevin has to say, especially considering his background.
That's absolutely, for sure. We're looking forward to that, Rick. And then at 4:05, we're going to switch gears, and we're going to move to Amy Ridenour. She's chairwoman of the National Center for Public Policy Research, and specifically today, we're going to be talking with her about an interaction that she had with the Gannett News Service, which is the owners of the New York Times, a liberal paper, obviously, but specifically in regard, for those who can remember, when they published the names and addresses on an interactive map, actually allowing people to go online and go up one street and down the other and find the houses of people who had a registered handgun. So this was a major issue. We're going to talk with her about the response of that interaction that she had with them, and a little bit about really the extent of what actually they did when they released all those names. That's a Sam, of Amy Ridenour.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Sam, if I was a criminal, I would absolutely get a hold of that list and absolutely avoid the houses of people who own guns.
Well, see, absolutely. We're going to talk with her about that because, because clearly not just is it a revealing of information that theoretically, if not lawfully, should have been preserved, but you not only, in one hand, put at risk those who have the guns from those who hate people who have guns, to you actually put out there as a target, almost like a blinking light, on the houses where there is no one who has a registered handgun, because you assume, logically, the crook would, that they are defenseless.
Absolutely.
So, there was a lot involved in that issue. So we're gonna talk about that. That's at 4:05, and then we'll round out the day, Rick, at 4:35 with Sean Higgins. He's a senior writer for the Washington Examiner, and we're going to talk with him about big labor. Mm-hmm. Lots of changes in unions in the history of this country. My father was a member of the Steelworkers Union for 35 years, but that was the time frame. Mm-hmm. Now you go out and you try to find people who are members of unions, and you have to look pretty hard now to find them. Things have changed, and so we're going to talk about what's changed, and is in fact the labor unions as we know them to be, are they really obsolete or becoming obsolete in this 21st century? So I think that'll be pretty good information that we can talk about.
What I think is interesting, Sam, whenever I think of the numbers of people in labor unions today declining, the other flip side of that is 50% of people in labor unions are government workers.
Well, that's going to be one of the things we're going to look at. We're going to find out whether or not the loss in the private sector has been more than made up for by those who have joined the ranks of government union workers, which, Rick, that's almost an anathema thing. Government workers, those paid for by the tax dollars, actually really tell the taxpayers they're going to go on strike? I mean, it's an anathema thing, yet that's where growth has happened. We're going to talk about that.
All right, so we got a great show lined up, Sam. Sam, we got about 3 minutes or so before we go to our first break. And as I usually say at this time on Tuesday afternoon, Sam Rohr, what's on your radar screen?
Well, you know what? That's a good way to say it. Radar screen. Let's talk about radar. Because in the last couple of days, Rick, our military has been picking up on radar, aptly put, Soviet aircraft. And people need to be aware of this. Soviet aircraft, long-range bombers, flying over, guess where? Guam, which is where we have a lot of our military positioned. They are flying down, entering space that belongs to Japan on the northern side of the islands, and they have come for the first time in, I don't know what the number actually was. It's more than just a few years. It's been almost like a century, a generation. Actually entered and touched up against our west coast off California.
Interesting.
Enough that F-15s were scrambled to go up on a couple of these cases to intercept, to say what in the world's happening. Now in addition to Russian military long-range bombers being shown up on radar and things happening really across the world, their ships are also in motion. And they've made a big claim that they're going to have a major increase in their ships and so forth in the Black Sea, which is obviously underneath Ukraine. So that whole thing continues to build. But I think it's very significant and should not be lost in the fact that Russia is sending a message to these United States and to the Western world: don't push us too far, or we can tell you we have our guys and we have our places, our equipment all around this world while you've been sleeping, thinking, that's what I'm interpreting, while you've been downsizing over this last generation, particularly under this president, we haven't been. And now we're going to show you what we have. And when I see a connection between them and China, who's also, they're doing some increasing work together, Rick Crater, these guys who've had it in for us for a long time are actually flexing their muscles, and I do not believe that our commander-in-chief and those in Washington have enough sense to understand exactly what's happening.
Sam, I'll agree with you, and I also believe that part of these flybys by the Russian Air Force probably is they want to see how, not just to say, hey, look, we're not going to take your stuff, but also to see how we respond, to see if we respond. Sam, I remember as a teenager in high school that periodically, like once or twice a month, hearing stories about jets being scrambled out of, it's now Atlantic City Airport in Pomona, New Jersey, to chase Russian Bear bombers up and down the east coast of the United States. And that was back in the 60s. And now we got the same thing going on again.
And this, I know we're coming up on a break, but, we, the United States, did not negotiate well during the Cold War because the United States Western mind did not perceive that somebody could actually sit at the table, smile, look in your face, shake your hand, and agree, and then go and immediately break it. We weren't used to doing that kind of thing. And I believe that during this last, when the wall came down and so forth, we thought that Russia had fully changed. Russia, I don't believe, has at all fully changed. They just took the opportunity to regroup and to refortify themselves, only to come again and envision themselves as a world leader, empire building, which is what I think we're seeing in Ukraine. And this is a part of it. They haven't changed, in my opinion, because they're still communists. They're still Marxists.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Sam, sorry to interrupt, but guess what? We are up against our first break. Thank you, Mr. John Forsythe Jr., for that little hint there. And you are listening to us coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, like we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. East Coast time, and around the world on the internet via our new internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And don't forget, now you can listen to our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. Call using your cell phone. Use up those minutes. No extra cost for the call. Be right back.
I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-11, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today, the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And a real quick program note, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, please log on to patriotsride.org. That's patriotsride.org. And for a rebroadcast of yesterday's Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 5 p.m. when we end our live broadcast, please go to cprworldwidemedia.com. That's cprworldwidemedia.com. And you could also listen to a repeat broadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon at vigilantlibertyradio.us. And don't forget, you can listen to our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. So, Sam, during the break, I Googled about the Russian bombers, and there's an article here that says Russian President Vladimir Putin announced in 2007 that Russia was resuming Soviet-era sorties by its strategic bomber aircraft near NATO airspace that was suspended in 1992 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So Putin told people that they were going to do this, and it's just now finally coming out.
Well, you know, Rick, this is a problem, as we cover on this program regularly. There is a very, very real problem in that the news that comes off of the controlled media is filtered, it is manipulated, it is propagandized, so that when we have been hearing statistics about employment or unemployment, they're doctored. When we hear when we hear things about economic growth, or they're doctored. Same thing like this. These issues have been out there. Those comments have been made. Now, under normal circumstances, that kind of a statement should have gone right to the top of those on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who, frankly, right now are holding a hearing right now on Russian intervention in Ukraine. So those guys who are concerned at the moment, where were they? Asleep at a switch? I mean, these things, Rick Crater, haven't just happened. Russia's ability to flex muscles, which they are, and they're demonstrating that they can and they are willing to do it, didn't just start a week ago. This has been underway. Now, that was 2007. That's 7 years ago. A lot can happen in 7 years, Rick Crater.
Sure can. You know, Sam, and I think that what also has happened, we've been lulled into a false sense of security since 1992, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. After all, wasn't it Barack Obama who laughed at Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney said our greatest threat was coming from Russia? Okay, remember that?
There you go. You're correct. You're right on.
And the other thing, Sam, is the element of surprise is so important in any military attack. When you lull somebody into a false sense of security, it makes it easy to come in through the back door.
And let me throw one other thing in here, Rick Critter. We've mentioned it on this program before. People should not miss this. Look at the connection between, as we said it before, Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa. These are the BRIC nations. They're the ones that do not want to be told by Western government and the United States. They do not want to be linked to our dollar anymore. They have been warning about what they have been going to do. Putin said about 3 weeks ago, U.S., Mr. Obama, you threaten us with sanctions. We will, and we just may, drop the dollar. They dropped the dollar and go to something else, our economy gets tanked. They know that. Our guys in Washington kind of do too, some of them. I don't know if they take it seriously, but today, in Germany, in Frankfurt, for the first time, they offered bonds for sale, guaranteed by what? Chinese currency. No longer, they're not guaranteed by the IMF, not guaranteed by the U.S. dollar reserve currency, guaranteed by the Chinese yuan. Never, ever that happened. This is another indication that ought to be at the front page because it is a part of what Putin talked about, and it's what China and Russia together have been encircling this nation. And our folks have been so, I hate to say it, stupid and blind, as if to think that that no one has our anything but our best interest in mind. I mean, you got to be kidding me. We know what's happening, but these are happening. This is current. People need to be aware of it because these pieces are being linked together, Rick Trader. They are. It's
amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, you warned us about this, Sam. You've been talking about this for a couple of months here in the Conservative Commandos. You called it.
Well, I know. I mean, because you can see it. I mean, if you look at the sun at night, I mean, the star if you look at the sky at night and it's red, you're pretty certain it's going to be warm the next day.
Yeah.
It's about the same kind of thing here. They've warned, they've telegraphed, yet we do not take it seriously, and it's going to be, Rick Trader, to our own harm. This will, if we don't wake up.
Sam, we got about 2 minutes till we have to go to our next break. Anything else you wanted to get in?
Well, boy, I don't know if we have room to get into this other issue or not. It's only about 30 seconds. I'm going to talk real quick. If we have time to play it, we will.
Okay.
Be aware of religious persecution occurring in this country. Not too long ago, a 5-year-old was told in a dining hall in a public school that they could not bow their head to pray, that it was illegal. Yesterday, in Florida, a teacher called home, left this message on the phone, which we can play. It's only just a few seconds long, telling the parents that the child could not read a Bible in open read time in the classroom because it didn't meet the requirements.
All right, Sam and our good friend John Forsythe Jr. is going to play that.
The review of Mrs. Thomas. Giovanni called you because I asked him to. I noticed that he has a book, a religious book, in the classroom. He's not permitted to read those books in my classroom. He said, if I told him to put it away, you said not to do that. So please give me a call. I need to have some understanding on direction to him about the book he's reading as opposed to the curriculum for public school. Mrs. F. Thomas, thank you and have a wonderful day.
And Sam, I'm going to play that one more time for our audience so they can hear it again. And Sam, you said that this was a teacher calling a parent where a child was told by a teacher they couldn't put their head down in prayer, correct?
No. On this case, they could not read their Bible in an open read time, so the teacher called the parents to tell them the child could not read that religious book. She said that it was the Bible. Couldn't read it in open read time. Was not allowed.
All right, so we're going to play that one more time for our audience.
The review of Mrs. Thomas. Giovanni called you because I asked him to. I noticed that he has a book, a religious book, in the classroom. He's not permitted to read those books in my classroom. He said, if I told him to put it away, you said not to do that. So please give me a call. I need to have some understanding on direction to him about the book he's reading as opposed to the curriculum for public school. Mrs. F. Thomas, thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
All right, Sam, let's just take an extra 30 seconds or so before we go into the break. Sam, you need to keep us posted on this. You need to keep followed up. You need to follow up on this one.
We can follow up because this is not the only example. Understand what the teacher said. This is a public school. The Bible is not a permitted book to read in the public school. the teacher actually went and left that message on the phone, would not return calls in regard to this at this point. This will become up as a further issue. But as in the other case, you cannot pray before your meal in a public classroom. Rick, this religious persecution is a major issue. It must not be overlooked. It is real. It's coming here if we do not stand up and make it known.
And again, Sam, we might be lulled into a false sense of security. People don't think this can happen in America, but it is. Hey, Sam, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sam Rohr and Rick Trader. Please don't go away. We will be right back with our first guest, Kevin Sabat.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm messy, but
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, the smiling coast I know, only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
Hello, I'm Reverend Carl Kelly, and I head up the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Indiana. President Obama's attacks on the Constitution continues to be aided and abetted by one of his trusted allies in Congress, ultra-liberal Democrat Andre Carson of Indianapolis, nationally known for his infamous racial rants against the Tea Party. I want to tell you about J.D. Manier. J.D. will be a representative for the people of the 7th District. J.D. Manier is a pro-growth Reagan conservative and is co-host of the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. He is asking you to join his army of supporters in order to defeat Carson and go to Washington to demand special prosecutors for Benghazi, the IRS, and other scandals. JD is interested in what's good for the people of the 7th District, not Nancy Pelosi. He will promote strong economic growth and jobs by getting the government off the backs of the people, voting for tax cuts and slashing regulations. Help elect a pro-life defender of freedom who will strongly support Israel, vote to cut wasteful spending, and battle to repeal Obama's socialist agenda. Log on to MinierForCongress.com and donate today. That's MINIEAR for Congress.com. Paid for and authorized by the J.D. Minier for Congress Committee.
I'm J.D. Minier, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Indiana District 7, and I approve of this message.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sam Rohr and Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station, like we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And now you can listen to our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. Now, there's no extra charge for this call, so if you call from a phone that you have unlimited minutes, that's great. No call, no charge at all. Now, Sam, as I was saying earlier, this is a first for the Conservative Commandos radio show. And I would like to introduce our next guest. Kevin Sabat served in the Obama administration as a senior advisor at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Kevin now is a consultant working with governments, the media, and other organizations on a wide range of drug policy issues. His area of specialization include evidence-based drug prevention, treatment, and law enforcement, as well as the impacts of drug legalization and medical marijuana. His latest book is Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. Kevin, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Kevin, I think this is an issue that we hear more and more and more about, all the arguments about marijuana. Many states are legalizing it as far as for a medical substance. Some states are trying to legalize it for recreation. And I got to be honest with you, Kevin, one of the reasons why I do this show is I had a 39-year-old niece who died. She had a 20-year-old drug history, and it all started, Kevin, with just a little bit of pot.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that, and unfortunately that's the case more and more these days. The issue is that today's marijuana is not really the marijuana of the 60s and 70s that a lot of parents have tried. So parents grossly underestimate the fact that you couldn't have a more genetically modified product that's selectively bred to increase the psychoactive part of marijuana, which is THC.
Right.
And we're seeing the huge problems in Colorado already with THC-infused, like candies, cookies, brownies, sodas that are getting into the hands of kids, and also who are not experienced users who think that because it's in the chocolate chip cookie, it must not be that bad, and in reality, it's sending them to the ER for a panic attack. And people are shocked to hear that is happening, but it is happening every day.
Well, Kevin, you did a thing at the Heritage the other day, a speech at the Heritage Foundation, which prompted us to ask you to come on our show. And you were discussing your book, Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. And Kevin, what I want to try to do is go down this list and you comment on each one of them. Myth number 1, marijuana is harmless and non-addictive.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Well, that's one of the biggest myths out there. The sort of joke about it is that that's totally at odds with every major medical association that's looked at this. So the American Medical Association, Psychiatric Society, on and on and on, all have done reviews and have found that marijuana indeed is addictive, and it is addictive. Especially 1 in 6 kids who try pot at age 16 will at some point become addicted to marijuana. If you try later in life, there's a less of a chance. That's because the adolescent brain is essentially under construction until age 30 or so. And so if you do anything when you're younger, it's more apt to have an effect on you. And certainly that's the case with marijuana. Again, this is mainly because of the different really strain of marijuana that's out there that most kids are getting today. Also, we know that there is a huge connection to mental illness. There is a very big connection to mental illness. There's a connection to poor driving, actually car crashes. So it's certainly not the harmless weed or herb that we hear about often.
Well, in fact, in your article here, it has that, or your seven myths, that additionally marijuana users pose dangers on the road, despite the popular myth. According to the British Medical Journal, marijuana intoxication doubles your risk of a car crash. How does that compare, say, to alcohol?
Well, alcohol triples or quadruples your risk, depending on the study. But, of course, just because alcohol triples your risk and marijuana doubles it, it doesn't mean that, therefore marijuana is safer and we should encourage it. In fact, kids are getting the wrong message today because of various reasons that marijuana and driving are okay. And they think that if you drive 35 and a 65, that essentially that is less dangerous than driving 90 and a 65. Well, they're actually both really dangerous, and they're both liable to cause you problem on the road. They both should be discouraged when driving.
Kevin, let me ask you this question. You hear a lot of talk about secondhand cigarette smoke. What about secondhand marijuana smoke? And let me tell you where I'm coming from. Kevin, one of my claims to fame is I was at the original Woodstock. When I was in high school, I hung around with kids that smoked pot. I used to supervise bus ski trips, and believe it or not, on those buses, a lot of marijuana was smoked. I never smoked it myself, but I inhaled it because of other people smoking it. Was I also at a risk?
Well, the research shows that you were, of course, we're just in the infancy of doing the research, all the research that we need to do on secondhand smoking. But smoking anything is bad for you, and inhaling it passively is bound to also be bad for you. The research is going on further with it, but it's certainly something that we're looking at, and it's something that is not healthy, especially when you think about kids.
Kevin, let's go on to myth number 2, and you hear a lot about this today, about medical marijuana. Smoked or eaten marijuana is medicine. Is it?
Well, smoked marijuana is not medicine, and neither is eaten crude marijuana. It's never been classified as medicine by any scientific authority. However, that does not mean that there aren't components in marijuana that have medical properties. There are. We know that there are hundreds of components in marijuana that we're only learning about now, and we know some of them indeed have medical properties. But we don't smoke opium to get the effect of morphine, nor do we need to smoke marijuana to get its beneficial effects. So we need to have these available at pharmacies, in products that we understand the dosage and the side effects. That is not the case with smoking joints right now. There's no way to dose a smoked joint. The side effects are often undesirable. They interact with medications in an unknown way. You don't get them from a pharmacy. You get them from a so-called dispensary with a 22-year-old kid with no medical experience selling it to you. And that makes no sense. We need to have it in a pharmacy, in a medical product, not as a smoked product out there.
Well, Kevin, what about these places, say, for instance, in California, where medical marijuana is legal? They're not, from what I understand, they're not getting it from pharmacies, but from storefronts? Yeah,
they're getting them from storefronts, from people with no medical experience who, frankly, are out there to make a quick buck. And a very small minority of doctors are authorizing this. You pay these doctors $100 cash. You go in, they look at you for 2 seconds, you tell them you have a backache, and they give you your recommendation. You walk 10 steps to the counter, and you get your marijuana legally, and you walk out with it. It's de facto facto legalized in California, and it had been de facto legalized in Colorado even before it was actually legalized for about 5 years. That was the case. So,
hey, Kevin, we got to go to a break. Could you please hold on through a break for 2 minutes? All right, we are going to take a little break right now. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Sam Rohr and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet via CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And don't forget, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. Please don't go away. Sam and I will be back to continue our conversation with Kevin Sabat.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, the smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening, please log on to PatriotsRide.org. That's PatriotsRide.org. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon, place for that is at CPRWorldwideMedia.com at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can also hear a rebroadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon at VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And want to welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show Kevin Sabat. Kevin served in the Obama administration as a senior advisor at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. Kevin, thanks for holding through the break. We appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you for having me.
And we're discussing Kevin's book, Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. Kevin, got to ask you something. You feel honored being on the Conservative Commandos radio show, considering your past history of working in the Obama administration?
Well, I am honored, and I also worked in the Bush administration and briefly in the Clinton administration, so I'm actually nonpartisan, just trying to get this message out. This group that I helped found, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, and they can hear that on learnaboutsam.com, was co-founded by Patrick Kennedy, who you can't get more really liberal than that. And David Frum was George Bush's speechwriter in the first term. So this is a bipartisan issue. It has nothing to do with partisan. It has to do with what kind of country we want to create and, what opportunities we want our young people to have. And frankly, in a more competitive global economic environment, what kind of country and people that we are raising to lead our country in the future.
Wow, that hits it. That hits it on the bullseye, if you ask me, Kevin.
Well, it really does. I mean, think about it. We know marijuana reduces IQ. Okay, regular marijuana use has been scientifically proven, statistically significantly increases your risk of a reduction in IQ. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and you lose 8 points on your IQ, which is what the study showed, you know what? You're probably not going to miss those 8 points. But if you're an average student today, which is obviously average means you're most likely to be, and you have a 100-point IQ and you lose 8 points, that's a really big deal. And we have to kind of think about what kind of nation are we creating at a time when, I got to tell you that the kids in the countries that we're competing with for those jobs, they're not smoking pot, okay? They're not interested in this. And yet we're kind of saying, well, it's not a big deal and we can look the other way, and I did it at Woodstock, what's the difference? Or I did it in the dorms in the 70s, who cares? I'm a successful person now. Yeah, that might be the case, but it's Russian roulette if you're a kid smoking today's high-grade marijuana.
Kevin, just last week, the Obama administration came out and said it may pardon a lot of people who are in jail on drug charges, and gets to your myth number 3. Countless people are behind bars simply for smoking marijuana.
Right. Well, that is a huge myth that's out there, one of the biggest ones. And if the pardons do go through, that the president has kind of hinted at, they're not going to have anything to do with marijuana offenders because marijuana smokers are not in prison. Your chances of getting arrested even, or they've done studies, 1 in 12,000 joints smoked for annual users. And, 0.1% of people in our state prison, their most serious crime is smoking marijuana, and usually those people pled down from a more serious. So it's a huge myth. Now, of course, we are arresting people and citing them and giving them warnings, and sometimes they spend time, like a day in jail, a local jail or something, but certainly not prison. And I think there are ways we can change that. I'm not in favor of criminalizing those people with a joint in their pocket and making sure that they never get a job because they have a criminal record. I'm not about that either, but I don't think that our only choices for policy are legalization on the one hand or incarceration on the other. The group that I started, Project SAM, which is learnaboutsam.com, we are all about finding sensible, pragmatic solutions that don't fall into either dichotomy. But let me tell you, people are not filling our prisons for smoking pot.
All right. Kevin, I wanted to bring my co-host Sam Rohr into this conversation. Sam?
Kevin, just one quick question for you, because I'm going down through what you listed out there. I think is very helpful for our listeners. This is the question. I was in the legislature 18 years, actually here in Pennsylvania. Right. The issue of making marijuana somewhat legal, and there's a question how it's going to be done, is there. The question I have for you is this. Is there any way, or let's put it this way, is there any necessity for marijuana to be made medically available as compared to is something else out there that would work just as fine? In other words, should the legislatures actually be trying to consider a way to give marijuana, making it medically available, or is that opening up a door that we can't shut?
Well, personally, I mean, that door has been open, and we know that the tactic of the legalization movement from 40 years ago was to use medical as the red herring. In fact, those were their exact words, and they've been very smart and successful in doing so. You're right to say that most physicians prescribe non-marijuana type medications for the different illnesses that are out there. For the small number of people relative to everybody that reacts positively to marijuana, the point is we have non-smoked products available either in testing, clinical trials right now. You can literally go to clinicaltrials.gov, type in marijuana and cancer or MS or whatever, Crohn's disease, and you can enroll in a clinical trial. So you can actually access those today, and they're available. And so that is what I would think would be needed, not a legislature. With all due respect, I don't think state legislators should be legislating medicine. I think that's up to doctors and the scientific process. And so what the scientific process has shown is we don't smoke any medicine. There are far better medications, as you mentioned, than any marijuana-based one. But if there is a marijuana-based one that seems to work for some people, we should be able to get them that in a safe, regulated environment, not in the environment of, medical marijuana dispensaries. Less than 2% of people with a medical marijuana card in these states have cancer, HIV, Crohn's disease, any of these, MS, glaucoma. They don't have any of those diseases. They have back pain. So it's really become a problem.
Kevin, let me ask you one more point, a real question, then back to Rick. And this is this. What then can you say is the distinctive difference between all of the other pharmaceutical drugs, some of which are extraordinarily habit-forming, all that kind of stuff that you can get over the counter? What is the distinctive to say we can do those things, but we cannot nor should do marijuana?
Well, because those things are not smoked, first of all. Secondly, they've been put into an actual medication, so we know the dosage and we know the side effects, etc. And they do work for a lot of people. I mean, as bad as opiates can be, they're also life-saving for people. Now, does that mean that cannabis might also go down that same path? I actually hope that it does. I mean, I hope people can find relief from cannabis. I'm not anti-marijuana for those that truly need it with cancer, etc., but I think they're going to be finding that with non-smoked forms, not in a joint. So we need to develop those medications just like we've developed the opiates.
Okay, thanks so much, Kevin.
Sure.
Kevin, we only have a couple more minutes, and I want to ask one more question, also leave some time for you to plug your book a little bit. Prevention, intervention, and treatment are doomed to fail, so why try?
Right. Well, we know that's a big myth as well. Treatment does work for a lot of people. It's much more cost-effective than anything else other than prevention, which is even more cost-effective than treatment or enforcement. We also need to intervene early on use, and that means parents, coaches, and medical professionals who, God, you'd be surprised, they're the most undertrained on this issue. Totally. Most of them don't even get addiction training. They need to get trained to look for early signs so that we can stop use from progressing. And I talk about all of this in my book, which is called Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. That's reefersanity.net, where I talk about it. But it's been a real pleasure to be on the show with you today.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you. But before I let you go, you brought up something I wanted to ask you about. What about parents? It seems parents today don't want to be a parent. They want to be a kid's best friend. And you know what? What's your take on that?
Well, being a kid's best friend is, you want to be your kid's friend. Everybody does. But let me tell you, not being a parent and trying to only be a friend is really a recipe for disaster. Parents, kids, we know that kids want boundaries. Even if they don't say they do, they actually look to parents for guidance. A lot of parents think, well, I can introduce alcohol or marijuana to my kid, and at least, they'll be doing it in a controlled environment with me there and whatever. We know that that's a huge fallacy. Parents that introduce substances to their kids, which is increasingly common these days, it's not like those kids only sit around and use those substances with their mom or dad. They use it with their friends when their mom and dad aren't around. So they're introducing them to an addictive behavior. We need parents to be parents, to set boundaries, talk early about substance abuse, about all these kinds of drugs, about prescription drugs, which is another huge issue we didn't even talk about today.
We'll have to get you back on. We'll have to get you back on to talk about that. But Kevin, we got to go in about 30 seconds. One more time, the title of your book, Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana, and it's Kevin, S-A-B-E-T, Kevin, and your web address for Sam?
It's learnaboutsam.com.
Well, Kevin Sabet, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and I hope you'll come back again sometime.
I'd love to. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks so much.
Take care. God bless.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, Sam, did you ever try it?
Never have. Never smoked it. Never put it in my lips, Rick, so no.
Me neither.
Matter of fact, I'm not sure if I even smelled it. So.
Well, I've smelled it. I got to be honest with you. I've smelled it, but I've never done any illegal drug in my life. I've never smoked a cigarette, and as I keep saying here on the show, I was at the original Woodstock.
Rick, you're better qualified than our president.
Maybe. Hey, Sam, we are up against a break. Believe it or not, time flies. Great interview with Kevin Sabet. Again, the name of his book, Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. And you're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Hey, don't forget, check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioshow.com and CCRShow.com. 2 different sites, different information. Please don't go away. We'll be right back.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
Hello, I'm Reverend Carl Kelly, and I head up the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Indiana. President Obama's attacks on the Constitution continues to be aided and abetted by one of his trusted allies in Congress, ultra-liberal Democrat Andre Carson of Indianapolis, nationally known for his infamous racial rants against the Tea Party. I want to tell you about J.D. Manier. J.D. will be a representative for the people of the 7th District. J.D. Manier is a pro-growth Reagan conservative and is co-host of the Conservative Commandos Radio show. He is asking you to join his army of supporters in order to defeat Carson and go to Washington to demand special prosecutors for Benghazi, the IRS, and other scandals. JD is interested in what's good for the people of the 7th District, not Nancy Pelosi. He will promote strong economic growth and jobs by getting the government off the backs of the people, voting for tax cuts and slashing regulations. Help elect a pro-life defender of freedom who will strongly support Israel vote to cut wasteful spending, and battle to repeal Obama's socialist agenda. Log on to MinierForCongress.com and donate today. That's MINIEAR for Congress.com. Paid for and authorized by the J.D. Minier for Congress Committee.
I'm J.D. Minier, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Indiana District 7, and I approve of this message.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show. This is Sam Rohr and Rick Trader today. And as we roll into our second hour here, we are really pleased to welcome as our guest here for this half hour Amy Ridenauer. She's chairwoman of the National Center for Public Policy Research. I could say a lot about her, but she could be known and recognized by some of you as a guest host on the nationally syndicated Michael Reagan Show, and a popular guest on radio and television talk shows, appearing on such programs as Politically Incorrect and on several CNN and Fox programs. Amy, welcome back to the Conservative Command Radio Show. We're glad to have you back with us.
I enjoy being with you very much.
Well, that's good. We enjoy being with you as well. We want to pick up on something here that you wrote about recently, dealing with the New York Times. We talked about it in our first half hour, just to kind of set it up for you coming on here today. But you gave a warning to the shareholders of the New York Times that Times management were in fact placing a liberal ideology ahead of stockholders' interests, which is a big deal. Tell us what the Times management, what they did to earn that, and how you believe that they violated fiduciary responsibility to their stockholders.
Well, to make it succinct, we believe the New York Times would have more customers, which is to say more subscribers and more people who read the paper on the Internet and see the ads there, if the New York Times was a little bit more accommodating or had more to offer to conservatives. Obviously, it's a liberal newspaper. We all know that. We believe that the news part is liberal. Obviously, the op-ed page is liberal. The New York Times management agrees that the op-ed page is liberal. So we simply said to the management of the New York Times, this was last Wednesday at its shareholder meeting, why don't you simply add several genuinely conservative op-ed writers to your op-ed page? Because 40%, according to Gallup, of the public is conservative. Only 20% says it's liberal. So those 40% of people, they feel like there's really nothing there for them at the New York Times. You can change that with just a couple of hires. By that standard, very cheaply. And then people
Amy,
would go and...
It seems like you're asking a newspaper to be balanced and objective. Really?
Well, we didn't even do that because he said that their news pages are objective. We don't agree with that. We didn't even fight him on that. We didn't even say fix your news pages and make them more conservative or more objective. We simply said, in order to get more customers, more eyeballs on the ads, more ad revenue, simply add a few conservative op-ed writers to, the paper. You don't have to take away, liberal geniuses like Paul Krugman. Keep them too, but just add a few conservatives. So if you're into money, which the business is supposed to be, you'd say, well, yeah, that's not a bad idea, particularly in the age of the Internet where a lot of your customers are not from your metropolitan area. But he said no. I mean, basically, the New York Times position, and specifically it's Arthur Sulzberger Jr., who runs the New York Times, he said no, they're comfortable being a liberal paper on the op-ed pages, and while this is not how he phrased it, basically they would rather be liberal than have more money. So
now that's an incredible statement when you're talking about stockholders and talking about an ability to stay in business. Let's go a little bit further right here at this point. Explain to our listeners, before we get into the why somebody would hold that position. Let's talk a little bit about what they did. What did the newspaper do? Obviously, they got a hold of names of gun owners and registered handguns and so forth, and they published that so that, if I understand correctly, that people could go and actually on an interactive map go up and down the street and find out who had registered handguns and who didn't, which obviously is an absurd thing. Did you get into that issue with them, and under what pretense did they take and release that information? Because was not that really a part of what created this whole thing in the first place?
Yes. This is a different corporation. This is the Gannett Corporation, which publishes USA Today, has many, many other, dozens and dozens of other media properties, including local newspapers, including, in this case, the Journal News, which is in Westchester County, New York, the suburban New York City. And early in 2013, it published, as you said, an interactive map of registered handgun owners. And the community was very upset. They were upset because the gun owners thought they'd get burglarized because criminals would want to steal their guns. People who did not own guns were upset because they figured the criminals would burglarize them because the paper basically advertised that they didn't have any self-protection. Inmates in the prisons were bragging to their guards, "We know where you live." It was a mess. Then it got worse because some people who were mad about this started issuing violent threats, death threats, that sort of thing, to Gannett newspaper personnel and even to National Gannett headquarters, which is in Virginia. So the question I asked, and this was last Thursday, was, now that a year has gone by and you've been able to think through what happened there, have you changed your procedures so that a local newspaper that gets it into its head to do something like this, something that was probably political, and I had some good reason to believe so, based on what the editor of the local paper was doing on Twitter on the gun issue, but it's doing things politically that can hurt the community and get death threats for Gannett personnel. New policy, do they have to go to you and get permission in the future? And I got back two interesting responses, really. The first one was, effectively, they are strongly encouraged to go to the National Gannett headquarters if they have any idea like this in the future before they move forward. Now, they're not required to, but I can understand that. A newspaper can't go to national headquarters for every story it prints, or they'll never get any work done. Mm-hmm. So they do have to have some local judgment there as to what hits the threshold as being controversial enough to require permission. But the second thing that I thought was interesting, and I have to say, first of all, I was talking to the CEO of Gannett. She seemed very sympathetic to the notion that this had upset the community. I was not getting pushback. I wasn't getting any, guns kill people and we need to, register more of them or ban them. I wasn't getting any of that. I was getting a very positive, I'm a Second Amendment supporter, a very positive message. The second thing, though, that was interesting is that after the meeting was over, a lot of employees of Gannett, including one of the members of the board of directors, pointedly approached me. I mean, like making a beeline across the room to get to me, approached me, to say they loved the question, they approved of the question, they were glad I came and asked the question, they liked the way I phrased the question, which was kind of a hard question, really. It was certainly not a softball. It was 100% supportive. And honestly, I mean, I would never say Gannett is a conservative organization. It's not as liberal as the New York Times. But still, it's the mainstream media. It was just way more positive than I expected. So, I tend to take people at their word with things, but I came out of there with the sense that while, yes, this did happen, that Gannett headquarters wasn't happy it happened, and if they have anything to say about it, things like that won't happen again.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. At least, certainly sitting in Virginia, that's a very strong Second Amendment area. I mean, they should have understood that. But just from a business perspective, ticking off a large number of your own people doesn't ever make sense. Did they have any? Was there any discussion at all about the the fact that by publishing such a list actually was allowing perhaps the newspaper itself to be contributing to the insecurity, the fact that somebody actually might have a harm done to them because of this? I mean, did that enter into any discussion?
Yes, obliquely. It was. I said it point blank because people did feel threatened and worried and concerned, and there were people who had gotten out protective orders against people who had threatened them, and then their addresses were made public. And the person that was stalking them found out where they lived. I mean, it was not good. And I just said all of that, and the body language, the response was almost like, that's accepted, that yes, we concede all that, we don't disagree. And in fact, when the people approached me afterwards, the employees and the board member, we liked your question, we agreed with your question. So I think, yes, absolutely. Now, I'm not saying that these people were all a bunch of Second Amendment supporters, or that they weren't liberal, or that down the road they might make a decision that's different than we in the conservative movement might make. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think they think two things. One, that perhaps their local editor, who did not get fired, may have had a political motive. They didn't say that, but of course, you do need to support your employees in public settings. And secondly, that this simply went too far. Now, I suspect, this map was published in the wake of the shooting of all the children in Connecticut, soon thereafter. So I suspect they might have concluded that the local newspaper, which isn't all that far from that Connecticut school, that maybe they had simply become over-emotional about it. And I say over-emotional in the sense that they let their professional judgment be affected, not that you shouldn't be emotional about it.
Right. Well, let's hold that right there, Amy. We're going to have to go away for a break right now. I want you to finish that, and then I want to come back and talk about the liberal ideology itself that would allow the political to go beyond both the financial, fiduciary, and put people at risk. So, folks, you're listening to the Conservative Commander radio show. Our guest for this hour here is Amy Ridenour, chairwoman of the National Center for Public Policy Research. We're talking about the New York Times and what they did when they released the gun ownership list and so forth, what came out of that. So stay with us, and we will come right back on the other side of this break.
Make my own decision. That's my prerogative. They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I. Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sam Rohrer and Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, please log on to patriotsride.org. And at 5 p.m., when we end our live broadcast, if you switch over to CPRWorldwideMedia.com, you can hear a rebroadcast of yesterday's show. Our guest this segment is Amy Ridenour, chairman of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Amy, thanks for holding through the break. We appreciate your time.
Glad to.
Amy, very interesting that you mentioned with Sam that after your question that individual members or executives of Gannett came up to you, talked to you, and thank you for your question. And what about fellow stockholders? Any response from fellow stockholders?
Well, no, although, of course, some of those employees and executives probably were shareholders. They did not have many shareholders at their meeting, however, so I wouldn't put any political conclusion to that. This meeting was held in their headquarters, and the vast majority of the audience was employees of the company.
Well, I think you brought up some very good points. I mean, these newspapers are supposedly in business to make money, to represent their shareholders, to make a profit for their shareholders. Newspapers are being shut down all over the country because the subscription rates are down quite a bit. And I would think that a lot of the shareholders would be concerned about the paper making money. And as you point out, that 40% of the people call themselves conservative, compared to 20% who consider themselves liberal. If you're turning people off about your product, that isn't a very good way to make money, is it?
Well, no, it is not at all. In particular, when you're dealing with op-ed pages, it is so easy to go find some conservatives who can write, because there's plenty of them. I understand it can be difficult to make your news pages objective. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse, and I think I could do it better if I was an editor than many of the editors out there, immodestly. But when many reporters are liberal, when editors are liberal, sometimes it can be hard for them to see where they're being biased, but sometimes they say, but we're objective, and they honestly in their hearts believe it. But when you get to the op-ed pages, they do know the difference between George Will and Krugman. So Paul Krugman. So, that is a very simple thing to do. And I would say something else as well. And this does go to the question of bias, particularly when we have a liberal president like Obama. When we have an internet, as we do, people can go on any newspaper they like on their website to get the news. So let's say you don't like the Philadelphia Inquirer, you can go and read the Las Vegas Review-Journal, which has a very conservative op-ed page. And you don't have to move to Nevada. You just go to that page instead. So the papers like, the Inquirer had to take that into account. Well, what we're seeing with the mainstream media is lately, the last few years, they have not been in investigative journalism pieces on the federal government, like Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the IRS scandal. I mean, all the things the conservatives are talking about, the liberal media doesn't care about. And yet, what is their competitive advantage against blogs and commentators and Fox News and so forth? It's the ability to have in-depth investigative journalism. And yet they're foregoing that because they don't want to find out that Obama ever did anything wrong.
I don't think they want to find out, Amy. I really don't think they want to find out. They want to keep their heads in the sand, to be honest with you.
Well, clearly they do. I mean, a lot of the liberal ideology is about feeling morally superior. And it's hard to feel morally superior if you've been gun running and getting hundreds of kids and young adults killed in Mexico for no reason we have yet to figure out, among other things.
Amy, one thing that Barack Obama said that I kind of agree with, that we have to reward our friends and punish our enemies? Don't you think that we conservatives need to use our economy, our dollars, to do the same thing? In other words, not just stop reading those newspapers, but also letting the advertisers in those newspapers know how strongly we disagree with the tactics of those newspapers to continue to promote a liberal agenda?
I completely agree with you. It's voting with your wallet. The consumers speak. Consumers have the right to speak. When you say you agree with Obama, I understand the sentence. I remember the context. I'm going to disagree with you slightly in that I think no elected official should ever say that. They are elected to be the president or the congressman or whatever of everybody. But when you're a consumer and you've got a choice between two kinds of laundry detergents, say, and one of them is from a company that gives to a whole lot of liberals, and one is from a company that's either neutral or gives to conservatives, absolutely buy the soap from the guys who are supporting America. So, yes, I agree with you emphatically, and that goes for radio and websites and everything else, too.
Yeah, Amy, I do as well. I'm going to jump back in here right now at this point and just take it a step further. You made a statement that said I think, quote, the decision to publish the interactive map was political. There can be no doubt. Now, I want to ask you a little bit on that. Were you able to determine that there was any kind of a grander strategy to do this kind of thing, to attack the Second Amendment? Obviously, since that time, Mayor Bloomberg put $50 million on the table. Even Tom Ridge has joined up with him to go after Second Amendment rights. Is this just a happenstance that happen to have a few people who happen to agree on something, or is there more behind it? I mean, to have a paper involved, there's something big here going on. Anything?
Well, I think in this case, it was the editor and a number of the other editors of this specific newspaper, the Journal News, which is in Westchester County, New York State. I do not, I don't think it was like a Gannett conspiracy or, Mayor Bloomberg was involved or anything of that nature. I think this was just some editors, including the top editor of the local paper, who had a strong, frankly, anti-gun opinion. And the reason I believe that is in part some of the things they said as the story was unfolding. For example, they said that they published the map so the community could have a conversation, as if people weren't having a conversation about the children being killed in Connecticut already. That was obviously always going to be a bigger story than the map. But secondly, and I did say this specifically to the Gannett CEO at the meeting last week, the editor of that newspaper just in the last week tweeted out a picture of the head of the National Rifle Association with the words on the top of the picture, "Stark raving mad." Now that is obviously a highly prejudicial and emotional statement. But
it indeed is.
Hey, Amy and Sam, I just wanted to jump in. Amy, when this happened at the Journal News, right after that, James O'Keefe did one of his videos. He went to the publisher of the Journal News, and by the way, they had an armed guard in front of their house. In other words, it's okay for them to use weapons, but it's not okay for you and I.
That was one of the things that many people in the community were very upset about, because the newspaper had the money to get guards. But your average middle-class family does not have the wherewithal to get, guys with guns to stand outside their door 24/7. So, yeah, and it was highly hypocritical as well, I think. You're either for guns for self-protection or you're not.
Well, hypocrisy is nothing new to this administration or to liberal ideology. That's for sure. Amy, we're winding up here right now. I want you to be able to give our listeners, again, information of where to go to follow what you're writing and saying. They need to hear more of what you're saying.
Okay, well, we have a blog at conservativeblog.org and a website at nationalcenter.org.
Nationalcenter.org is the website, and once again, the other?
Conservativeblog.org.
All right, conservativeblog.org. All right, well, Amy, we're going to wrap it up right now. Amy Ridenauer, thank you for being with us today. Thanks for standing up And hopefully, because of what you did and others, there will be some second thought anyways by the New York Times, certainly maybe by Gannett over on top. But thanks for being in there and raising the fight here for us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, bye now. All right, Rick Trader, here it is. Back to you.
All right, and we're going to a break. You can listen to a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening by logging on to patriotsride.org. And at 5 p.m., when we end our live broadcast today, you can hear a rebroadcast of yesterday's show at cprworldwidemedia.com. We'll be right back.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, the smiling coast I know, only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
Hello, I'm Reverend Carl Kelly, and I head up the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Indiana. President Obama's attacks on the Constitution continues to be aided and abetted by one of his trusted allies in Congress, ultra-liberal Democrat Andre Caution of Indianapolis, nationally known for his infamous racial rants against the Tea Party. I want to tell you about J.D. Manier. J.D. will be a representative for the people of the 7th District. J.D. Manier is a pro-growth Reagan conservative and is co-host of the conservative Commandos Radio show. He is asking you to join his army of supporters in order to defeat Carson and go to Washington to demand special prosecutors for Benghazi, the IRS, and other scandals. JD is interested in what's good for the people of the 7th District, not Nancy Pelosi. He will promote strong economic growth and jobs by getting the government off the backs of the people, voting for tax cuts and slashing regulations. Help elect a pro-life defender of freedom who will strongly support Israel, vote to cut wasteful spending, and battle to repeal Obama's socialist agenda. Log on to MinierForCongress.com and donate today. That's MINIEAR for Congress.com. Paid for and authorized by the J.D. Minier for Congress Committee.
I'm J.D. Minier, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Indiana District 7, and I approve of this message.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sam Rohrer and Rick Trader. And don't forget, you can now listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. There's no extra charges for this call, so if you call using a phone where you have unlimited long-distance access or cell phones where you have a lot of minutes, it's a free call. So, Sam, we do have our next guest with us, and the honor of the introduction is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Rick Trader. Yes, we are going to round out this program today with going to a topic that is extraordinarily controversial, but in many parts of this country. It's on the issue of unions, and the one to talk with us about it is senior writer for the Washington Examiner, Sean Higgins. Sean, we're glad that you're with us today on the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You wrote an article here, Out of Touch with America, Are Unions Obsolete? I think it's a pretty significant question. Personally, I think it's right on the mark. It used to be, Sean, as you accurately stated there, that most private sector employees, particularly in manufacturing, were really, that's where most of the blue collar workers we think of, that's where they belong. Right. Most of them were, was synonymous, lunch buckets in hand and unions, at least in the North here anyways. But things have changed, and I want to get into that with you. First, give our listeners a quick overview, if you can, of the history in the United States and from the standpoint of the percentage of union workers, percentage of workers, let's put it that way, that were a part of labor unions, say in the 1950s, as compared to now in 2014, so that we can see the change as it relates to private sector. We've gone up, we've gone down. What is it?
Well, sure. In the 1950s, which was in many ways sort of a high point for organized labor in the U.S., about 1 in 3 people were in organized labor. This was about 15 million people, and it was almost exclusively private sector, mostly sort of heavily industrialized sectors in the skilled trades. Private sector unions, by contrast, were almost unheard of. I mean, there were a few here and there, but they were very small, and in most places, even liberal groups, even some unions, were opposed to them. That sort of started to change in the 1960s, and then over the period of the 70s and 80s, the public sector unions started to continually grow, while the private sector ones started to shrink. And in fact, in about 2009 or so, the numbers actually passed each other for a couple of years, to the point now where about half of organized labor is now public sector unions. That is, people who work for the taxpayers in one way or another, either as like clerks or policemen, firefighters, or anybody else, like a tax assessor or something like that. And the number of people who work for the private sector is just about the same. I mean, there's 14 million people in organized labor now, and it's almost exactly split down the middle. In the last Labor Department filing, it showed that the private sector had edged just a little bit forward of the public sector, but the differences are practically marginal. It's, to a large extent, organized labor now is a public sector phenomenon.
Which is a really incredible thing when you think about that, because as you said, it used to be, it was almost anathema to actually conceive of the fact that those paid for by the taxpayers could actually have a mechanism by which they could refuse to go to work or in any other way threaten their boss, they're the ones who pays their bill, meaning the taxpayer. That was a gigantic shift. Could you comment from your perspective on what was it that permitted that shift, that cultural shift, to occur?
Well, originally, public sector unions had a very bad sort of reputation, in large part because some of the actions of some of the early public sector unions, they weren't really unions. I mean, they were sort of proto-unions, but they called themselves associations because they weren't officially recognized by the people who employed them. But in Massachusetts, for example, there was a notorious police strike that Calvin Coolidge was the one who actually called in the people to break, and it famously made his sort of reputation because he said there's no right to strike against public safety, because what happened was the police department literally didn't show up for 3 days, and people sort of ran riot through the streets, stealing stuff and that type of stuff, and that sort of image stuck with a lot of people for a long time. And even as late as the 1950s, you had people in the top leaders of the AFL-CIO saying, look, there's really no place for unions in the public sector. That just fundamentally doesn't work. And they said that not so much because I think they really believed it, but simply because they knew that the public was very strongly against the idea, and they were sort of afraid of a backlash if they didn't take that position. Then it just sort of changed in the 1960s because I guess the public sentiment sort of ebbed away. I mean, the people who remembered the sort of incidents that happened earlier in the century just got older and faded out. And political leaders, particularly Democrats, saw that there was a huge constituency to be had, from allowing public sector unions to do that. I mean, the mayor of New York at the time was one of the first to do it. President Kennedy was one of the first to allow federal government people to organize at some level, and it's just sort of continued over the next couple of years to the point where the money and the power started to speak, and they just grew in strength.
And that's an amazing thing. So you could probably overlay it. I mean, when I was in the Pennsylvania legislature for about 20 years, and we dealt with a lot of these things. I have not looked at a chart, but I would imagine that if you probably plotted the growth of centralized federal government, you probably would see a commensurate line with the inclusion or the growth of public sector unionism also.
Yeah, I mean, there's a. From your perspective as a former legislator, you must have seen this up close and personal. But there's a fundamental difference between the public and the private sector, which is that the private sector is constrained by the realities of economics. I mean, most unions aren't going to, at least most, aren't going to do something that's going to make their own employer go bankrupt. But in the case of the public sector, I mean, except in very rare circumstances, they don't go bankrupt. I mean, there's no competition. The money comes from taxpayers, which is a third party. So the natural constraints aren't there. Plus, I mean, the unions are also a constituent of the elected officials. I mean, so they can essentially be represented at both sides of the bargaining table. There's the union representative who directly represents the workers, and then there's the elected official who is elected, who may either owe his election to to some of the members of the union, or may be afraid that if he doesn't support them, they'll support a rival candidate. I mean, the average business owner, when he sits down at a table to negotiate a contract with the union, doesn't have to worry about whether or not the union doesn't like the contract. They'll vote him out of his job. But that does happen in the public sector, and that sort of that problem is sort of endemic in the very nature of what can happen. And you can get a lot of cases, and I write about this in the series, where serious corruption comes into this as a consequence.
Absolutely. So what you're painting there is a you take care of me, I'll take care of you type of a thing that begins to develop government of the union and the federal government, and things grow. When we come back on the other side of the break here, Sean, I want to look at now the incentives, or what caused and precipitated the precipitous decline in private sector unionism, particularly up north here. What was it that caused this whole thing to occur, and which brings us up to the point now where you have these two things, these two lines crossing. So if we can, we'll just go away to the break here right a minute. And folks, you're listening here to Sam Rohr and Rick Trader. Our guest in this quarter hour is Sean Higgins, senior writer for the Washington Examiner, dealing with an article, Out of Touch with America, Are Unions, in fact, Obsolete? Rick Trader?
Okay, Sam, and you can listen to a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening by logging on to patriotsride.org. And at 5 p.m., when we end our live broadcast, please switch over to CPRWorldwideMedia.com for rebroadcast of yesterday's show. Please don't go away. Sam and I will be right back.
They say I'm nasty, but oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sam Ward and Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, log on to patriotsride.org. That's patriotsride.org. You can also hear a rebroadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon at vigilantlibertyradio.us. And don't forget, you can now hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. There's no extra charge for this call, so if you call from a phone where you have unlimited access, there you go. It's a free call. And our guest this segment is Sean Higgins. He's a senior writer for the Washington Examiner. Sean, welcome back, and thanks for holding through that break.
Not a problem.
I wanted to point out to our audience, Sean, and please correct me if I'm not getting all the information correct, that this is actually a 5-chapter special report by the Washington Examiner, and it's part of the Washington Examiner's week-long commentary series on labor unions. Am I getting that right?
That's exactly right. It's available now as an ebook, too, I believe.
Fantastic.
Or at least I was told earlier. So.
All right.
Sean,
you know,
go ahead and look for that if you want to find out more about this.
What, do you have a link for that you could give out, or a website?
Well, just look on the website of www.washingtonexaminer.com.
Okay. You know, Sean, earlier you and Sam were speaking about the public versus the private sector unions, and you mentioned that the public sector unions were probably 50% of union membership. Sean, could we actually argue that it's actually greater than that? And I'll tell you why. Because when you, for instance, the construction unions that build bridges and roads and airports and things like that, all that spending comes from government money, doesn't it?
A substantial part of it does, yeah. I mean, and the one of the reasons why most organized labor supported the stimulus bill in 2009 was because that's what a lot of it was supposed to go for. I mean, when they said shovel-ready projects, it basically meant shovel-ready projects that would be available to union organized companies.
So Sean, when you talk about the income that is earned by union members, what percent of it do you actually think is derived from government spending in one way or another?
That's a good question. I haven't actually sat down and done the math of that. I mean, it is almost exactly 50% that work directly for the government. We know that from the Labor Department filings. And as you accurately point out, a substantial portion of what the private sector does is either subsidized or facilitated through incentives or something of that nature from the federal government. I'm not aware that anyone has actually sat down and run the numbers on that completely, but I wouldn't be surprised to find it was a substantial chunk.
Sam, back to you on that.
Okay, Sean, I want to go back to the question I'd asked you right before we took the break now.
Sure.
What caused the demise, primarily, in your opinion, of the effectiveness, or not effectiveness, but the influence of private sector unions, particularly when we look across the northern states here?
It's not any one particular factor. There's a lot of ones that have already been picked over by other people. For example, the changes in the economy, the restraints that on flexibility that the unions placed on employers in terms of adapting to the economic change, the rise of foreign competition. But I would also point out that one of the things that I think has been overlooked by a lot of people when they look at this is simply the fact that a lot of workers have walked away from the union. I mean, we just recently saw that in Michigan, for example, one union lost about 80% of its members in a single year, the first year after the right to work law was in place. 80%. I mean, what that shows is that a lot of the members there really didn't want to belong in the first place. They had to be there because they were unionized through a particular state program that required you to be a member of the union if you're going to apply to it. But they didn't want to be there. They didn't ask to be there, and as soon as they had the opportunity to leave, they did. I mean, I think that's the sort of unstated reason here. Is a lot of individual people just sort of look at the unions and wonder or think it's not doing a whole lot for them.
That's a good answer and a good question. I want to come back and ask you the question trying to make a point here.
Sure.
When I ask what caused the loss of influence of private sector unions, you basically are saying really workers were getting to the point where they were beginning to wonder what they were actually getting for their union dues, effectively.
Yeah.
And so they lost some relevance from that perspective. But if I were to ask you the question, because I know the answer in Pennsylvania because we dealt with it here, but most of the northern states, what caused the greatest loss of manufacturing jobs across the northern states?
The single cause?
The single greatest reason why manufacturing left the northern states. I'll tell you what. I wasn't trying to set you up and catch you anything. It's unionism. It was the compulsory unions across the northern states, and it was the fact that southern states had right to work. I know in Pennsylvania we dealt with this for all these many years. Our manufacturers would not grow here. Instead, they chose we're going to go down south. We're not going to expand here because the unions, you can't work with them up here. You go down south. So the point I'm trying to say here is that they not only were losing influence from the standpoint of what value they were to the workers were actually losing their jobs due to competition down south where people were able to, where their fellow workers had a choice. Comment?
No, well, that's certainly you make a very valid point, and there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, a lot of manufacturing and stuff has located in the South and the southern states, particularly the right-to-work states, for exactly that reason. I mean, you talk to the officials in places like Tennessee, and they'll proudly point to that. Among other reasons for it, we saw that in the case where the United Auto Workers tried to organize a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They went down there. They actually had the help of the company, because it was sort of in a position where it had to please its German union. So they sort of worked with the American union to try and help get them to do that. But the workers actually rejected the union. And I think a substantial reason was that they looked at the United Auto Workers and they looked at Detroit and they thought, they're not necessarily helping the people who are already their own members. I don't think they'll do a whole lot for us. And you see this in a lot of other cases. I mean, not only are the businesses locating there, but the workforce there just doesn't see the same need. There isn't the sort of cultural history that you have in the North, where unions were just something that people sort of expected and just thought was natural. In the South, they're like, well, we've gone along fine without it, and these are actually pretty good jobs. I mean, the people who are working in these sort of plants in the South at Volkswagen, Nissan, and other places, they're making good wages and they're making comparable benefits compared to their counterparts up north.
That's interesting, because that's one of the things that they always said. If you go to a right-to-work state, you're going to make more money. Got about 1 minute left here right now. I just want to give you a quick answer here. Governor Walker from Wisconsin said, quote, labor unions have to be relevant and provide a service if they're going to survive, end quote, which takes it back into your question, your whole article. Are unions obsolete? Do you believe that that organized labor are in fact going to be able to make themselves relevant in in the near future?
They can, if they fundamentally rethink how they do things. Part of their problem is they're fighting just a sort of rearguard action, trying to prevent any change in the sort of worst sense of the word reactionary. They need to sort of rethink how they do things, and one of the things they need to do is they need to find a way to reconnect, with workers as they actually work in, today.
There you go. Okay, so we're going to leave it right there. They can, basically you're saying they can, but they're going to have to understand the relationship to the worker and give them something that they need. And I think it's a good way to end of the program here today. Sean, tell our listeners, please, before you take off here, where to go to follow your writings, either more on this subject or anything else that you're writing about, please.
Well, just look at the Washington Examiner website, www.washingtonexaminer.com, all one word. You'll find myself and many other outstanding writers and reporters.
Indeed you do. You have a whole great list of folks there. So Sean Higgins, senior writer for the Washington Examiner, thanks for being with us today and closing out this Tuesday edition of Conservative Commander Radio Show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. All right, Rick Trader, we covered a lot of ground today again, as normal.
Indeed we did, Sam. And I want to thank you for acting as my co-host today. I also want to thank our other guest, Kevin Sabat, Amy Ridenauer, and our most recent guest, Sean Higgins. And just as a reminder, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, please log on to patriotsride.org. That's patriotsride.org. And at 5 o'clock, when we end our live broadcast in about 3 minutes, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of yesterday's show, please log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. That's cprworldwidemedia.com. You could also hear today's show tomorrow afternoon at vigilantlibertyradio.us. And if you'd like to hear the Conservative Commandos radio show anytime, day or night, please call 832-999-1199. I want to thank Mr. John Forsythe Jr. for working the boards, but for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Huge thanks to our co-hosts, contributors, patrons, callers, and our friends at WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460, where we broadcast live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 to 4 p.m. Central. Look for us on the internet